Okay, so today we're going to go through 2 writing passages together. Your next writing benchmark is next Tuesday, the 19th. We've been working on essays for like 2 weeks now, so you should hopefully feel a little more comfortable with essays than you did on the last benchmark. But now we're going to focus a little more on these passages. So if you remember, there's a couple differences between reading passages and writing passages. Reading passages have the paragraphs numbered, but writing passages have each sentence numbered. This is so that they can ask you, oh, what's wrong with sentence 3, and you can come here and look here for it. Now, on the writing test, there are going to be 4 passages. And with that, there will be 2 revision passages and 2 editing passages. Revision passages, those are going to be the big changes. So like you're taking sentences out, you're putting sentences in, you're changing the order of things, you're combining sentences. These are going to be your big changes in your paper. Editing, those are the little changes. So like spelling, punctuation, grammar, stuff like that. Those will be editing. Now, editing passages are usually easier. Revision passages are where y'all struggle. So usually they'll have the 2 revision passages first, and then they'll have 2 editing passages later. So depending on what you want to do, if you want to get the hard ones out of the way and do revision first, then just do them in order. But if you want to start with the easy ones and then go back to the hard ones, then you can flip to the last 2 passages and do that. Now, if I'm trying to tell the difference between a revision and an editing passage, usually I can tell that here. Either I could go to the questions and look at the questions, or I can tell that in this little paragraph here. If it's revision, it'll say something like, read Muriel's paper and think about how it should be revised. Whereas an editing passage will say something like, proofread the paper and look for any mistakes. This lets you know that it's editing, and it's going to ask you little questions like, what change, if any, should be made, and that'll be like spelling or something like that. But with revision, these are going to be those big ones, so you got to be careful on these. Now, just like anything, just like any reading passage, I'm going to do the passage the same. I'm going to start with the title here, and I'm going to write my prediction out to the side. So if you don't know phobia, if you didn't know what phobia means, then you would look it up, but I'm going to tell you for the sake of time. Phobia is like an extreme fear. An extreme fear. So I'm not just afraid of something, I am absolutely terrified of it. I will have a mental breakdown if I'm around something. So people might have phobias against heights, people might have phobias against bugs, people might have phobias against all kinds of things. But it's not just being really afraid of something. So don't just say, oh, I saw a spider yesterday and I freaked out, so I have a phobia against it. That does not mean that you have a phobia. A phobia is where, literally you will have a mental breakdown because of it. So, this title says, who's afraid of the big bad phobia? So out here to the side, I want you to write your predictions on what you think this passage is going to be about. Alright, so paragraph 1, just like in reading passages, I'm going to read this and I'm going to annotate out to the side. What's the difference, looking at this, what's the difference between reading and writing passages? What do you notice?
It has spaces between the lines so you can make
It does. It has spaces in between the lines so we can make little notes. What else?
Every sentence is numbered.
Every sentence is numbered. Why?
So when it asks you the questions, you can say like sentence 1 or like
So
sentence 2.
when it asks you questions, it can say, in sentence 1, what would you change? Something like that. It's going to ask you about these sentences specifically. So when I'm reading this, though, I'm going to read and annotate, just like normal. So paragraph 1. Fear is healthy because it serves to protect people from danger. For instance, if you were to encounter a big hairy spider under your bed, it would be normal to feel afraid and to run away to safety. Reactions like that have helped humans survive for thousands of years. However, sometimes a person's fear becomes so strong that it controls that person. Sometimes this fear occurs when there is not even a real danger present. When this happens, the fear is said to be a phobia. Psychologists consider a fear to be a phobia when it is excessive or unreasonable, and when it leads to great anxiety or panic. So what is this paragraph telling me?
That it can also be a psychological problem. Kind of what phobias are.
The difference between fears.
Difference between fears and phobias. Stop talking and write this down. Difference between fears and phobias kind of lets you know what takes it from a fear to a phobia. When it's just a fear or when it's a phobia. All right, next paragraph. There are three main types of phobias: social phobia, specific phobia, and agoraphobia. A person has a social phobia if he or she is afraid to be around other people or to be in a social situation. Specific phobias are fears of very specific things in the environment. For example, specific phobias include the fear of spiders, arachnophobia, the fear of crossing a bridge, gyrophoria, the fear of heights, acrophobia, the fear of the dark, nyctophobia, the fear of butterflies, motophobia, and the fear of having one's picture taken, apopsychophobia. Finally, the third type of phobia, agoraphobia, is the fear of leaving one's home or other safe place. So let's pause for a second. What is this paragraph telling me about?
Different types of what phobias? Types of phobias.
Types of phobias. How many types are there?
3.
3. 3 types of phobias. Okay. Though a person who has a phobia knows that his or her fear is irrational and excessive, he or she often cannot do anything about it. Some people can avoid stuff. These people may do everything they can to avoid riding in elevators or being around cats, for example. Clearly, having to avoid everyday objects and situations can cause big problems in a person's life. So, what is this telling me?
But like the effects, I guess.
They have, it comes with effects. Like, it's not like, oh, it's just like, this is just me. It's like they come with effects, kind of like they go through bad stuff.
How it's hard for people to go through everyday life because of their fears.
How it's hard for them to go through everyday life with their fears?
How do we rate that?
Hard to go through life with fears. Okay, while you're writing, I'm going to talk to you about this first line too. It says, though a person who has a phobia knows that his or her fear is irrational and excessive, he or she often cannot do anything about it. So what this is saying is, they know that it's crazy. They know, stop and listen. They know that their fear is crazy. They know that riding an elevator or being around a cat, they know that that's crazy, but they can't help it. They can't do anything about it. Okay, so even though they're like crazy afraid of heights, they can't help it. If they're up too high, they just freak out. And they know that it's crazy, but they can't help it. Next paragraph. Medications and hypnosis have been used to treat phobias. However, most therapies involve at least some type of desensitization. Desensitization is exposing a phobic person to small amounts of a fear-causing object or situation. For example, a person with a fear of dogs might be shown a picture of a dog. With the help of a therapist, the person learns calming strategies so that he or she is not scared of the picture. Next, the person may be exposed to a live dog in a cage. When the person learns to be unafraid of the caged dog, he or she might be placed in a room with a friendly, uncaged dog. Gradually, the person learns to not fear dogs at all. So what is this paragraph telling me about?
It's about ways to help.
Lose their fear, or how they help them lose their fear.
How they help them lose their fear. I'm going to say how they gradually lose their fear. They gradually give them little parts of it. So at first they just show them a picture of it, and that picture like usually freaks them out. But over time they kind of teach them to kind of deal with that until the picture doesn't scare them anymore, and then they move on to the next step. They go in small steps until they're not afraid of it anymore. Okay, last paragraph. Treating phobias is difficult. Treating phobias is difficult. People are often willing to endure therapy in hopes of living a better life. When a fear is excessive or unreasonable, it deserves attention. Phobias can control people's lives, keeping them from enjoying the things that are important to them. Hopefully, in the future, more people will learn how to recognize and get help for their phobias. So what is this paragraph telling me?
That like
It controls people's lives.
Okay, it can control people's lives, and so what should they do?
get help. Like seek
Get help? Okay. I'm going to say phobias can control lives, so get help. I'll say get help if you need it.
Get help. Get help.
Well, basically it's the saying, like, phobias are serious. You know, if you have a phobia, you shouldn't live like that. If your life is being affected by this phobia that you have, if you're so unbelievably afraid of something that your life is like, you're not living your life to the fullest, then you should seek help. There's nothing wrong with that. You should go and get help so that you can have the life that you deserve, right? Okay, so point of view of this, yes, is third objective. We don't know anyone's thoughts or feelings. It's just like reporting it to you. It's like an article. What about organizational pattern? What do you think the organizational pattern is? Description. How do you know?
Because it is describing what it is and how it works and like features.
Describing phobias. What are phobias? What kind of phobias are there? What do people do to get rid of phobias? All right, so then author's purpose should be easy. What is it?
Inform.
Inform.
It's express.
Bro,
Inform. Okay, now, when I'm proving my answers on writing passages, this is when it gets different from reading passages. Usually on reading passages, I just tell you what paragraph I found it in. But for writing, they have to tell you where it is, right? Otherwise, you won't know. So it always says after sentence 7 or at the third paragraph. So all of these are going to tell you. So how do I prove my answers on writing passages? Do y'all remember what I have you do?
Click on
On a writing passage, how do I have you prove your answers? Anyone remember?
Do you like go back and like fix it? I don't know.
Underline the sentence and then like
Circle the
write
sentence.
it. No? Okay.
Yeah.
When I'm proving my answer, pay attention. When I'm proving my answer on a writing passage, I'm going to write an explanation.
That's not nice.
Go ahead and write this at the top. Write explanation next to each answer choice. Explaining why it's right or wrong. So every single one of these, I'm going to say, oh, A is right because, A is wrong because, B is right because, B is wrong because. You don't have to write all of that. You can just put like an X and then tell me why. But you need to give an explanation for every single one, telling me why you know that that is wrong or right. Number 1 says which sentence could be added after sentence 7 to create a stronger introduction to this paper. So what is this asking me?
how to make the thing after sentence 7 like a strong.
How to make the introduction stronger. My introductory paragraph, which is this first paragraph, what can I add here at the very end to make this whole thing stronger? So for that, I'm going to go ahead and read this whole paragraph again. This was telling me the difference between fears and phobias. Fear is healthy because it serves to protect people from danger. For instance, if you were to encounter a big hairy spider under your bed, it would be normal to feel afraid and to run away to safety. Reactions like that have helped humans survive for thousands of years. However, sometimes a person's fear becomes so strong that it controls that person. Sometimes this fear occurs when there is not even a real danger present. When this happens, the fear is said to be a phobia. Psychologists consider a fear to be a phobia when it is excessive or unreasonable and when it leads to great anxiety or panic. So which of these can I add after this? Psychologists consider a fear to be a phobia when it is excessive or unreasonable and when it leads to great anxiety or panic. A. Although phobias can create huge problems for the people who suffer from them, they are often treatable. Where does it talk about treating phobias? At the end. So would it make sense for me to say that in my first paragraph? No, right? Here I'm just going to write at the end. At the end. There's my explanation. That's all I'm expecting whenever I say explain why this is wrong. This just lets me know that you've thought about it and you can tell me, why. B. Of course, many people are afraid of germs, but only people who are excessively fearful of germs have mysophobia.
No.
What is this sentence telling me? What is it talking about?
It's about germs.
It's talking about a specific kind of phobia, right? Where does it talk about specific kinds of phobias? In the next paragraph. So would it make sense for me to have it in the first paragraph?
No.
No. So here I'm just going to write paragraph 2. Stop. There's my explanation for why that one's wrong. This should go in paragraph 2. C. I know about phobias because my cousin Howard used to suffer from one.
No, they're not talking about cousin.
Garbage.
They're not talking about, right? That would be a trash answer. That has nothing to do with anything. So I can write, Stop. I can write trash there. Just don't write trash next to every single one. It has to actually be a trash answer. This really is a trash answer. D. Psychologists and psychiatrists are doctors who work to treat patients who suffer from phobias.
Yes.
Would that go okay right after this one that says psychologists consider a fear to be a phobia when it is excessive or unreasonable and when it leads to great anxiety or panic?
Yes, because
Yes.
they're talking about. Yes, they're talking about what that is.
Because it mentions psychologists, right? It mentions psychologists and then it tells you what it is. So that makes sense. So I'm going to say mentions psychologists in sentence 7. It mentions a psychologist right before that, so now it's going to tell me what a psychologist is. So just like I proved this one, I'm going to do that for all of these. Number 2. Muriel wants to add the following sentence to the third paragraph, which is sentences 13 through 16. Where is the best place to insert this sentence? So 13 through 16, this paragraph. So let's see, what was this paragraph about? It said, it's hard to go through life with fears, talking about how those phobias might affect people. So let's see, what is the sentence saying? Other people simply choose to suffer with their phobia because they do not know how to avoid their fears or how to treat their phobia. So what is this sentence telling me?
Some people don't know how to.
Some people don't know how to what?
Like, get rid of the phobia?
Okay, some people don't know what to do. Some people don't know what to do, so what do? What happens because of that?
They don't care.
They stay scared.
They just stay scared. They just have their phobia for the rest of their life, right? I'm going to put so they keep their phobia. So now we got to decide where this sentence would be okay to go. Where it talks about people, some people don't know what to do, so they just deal with it, right? They just have that phobia for the rest of their life. If they're afraid to leave their house, then they just don't leave their house. So let's see. Good point. What if they have to go to the post office? What if they have to go to the doctor? What do they do?
Or groceries, they can just go and get that shipped.
Oh yeah.
What if they have to go to the doctor? What do they do?
They're just gonna
Call
stay
the
home.
doctor to come.
They'd either have to try to find a doctor to come to their house, or they just don't go to the doctor then. Let's try reading it after each of these. So after sentence 13. Though a person who has a phobia knows that his or her fear is irrational and excessive, he or she often cannot do anything about it. Other people simply choose to suffer with their phobias because they do not know how to avoid their fears or how to treat their phobia.
No.
No, would it make sense to say other people there?
No, because they haven't even said anything about.
No, right? What other people? So here I'm just gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna draw an arrow to there where I said other people.
I just put doesn't sound right for all of them.
Sentence 14. Let's try that. Though a person, no, I'm going to start here. Some people can avoid stuff. Other people simply choose to suffer with their phobia because they do not know how to avoid their fears or how to treat their phobia.
No, because
These people may do everything they can to avoid riding in elevators or being around cats, for example.
no, because there's not an example for.
If I stick this in here, if I stick this right there, and then I say these people, when I say these people, who am I talking about?
The people who have the phobia.
Am I talking about the people who avoid stuff or the people who choose to suffer with it?
Oh,
The
so
people
it's
who choose to suffer.
The people who choose to suffer. So if they choose to suffer with it, would it make sense for them to go out and just avoid riding elevators or being around cats?
No, because they never said.
Because they're choosing.
No, right? They're
to keep
choosing
their
to suffer
phobia.
with it. They're not choosing to avoid it. They're choosing to suffer with it. So I'm going to write choosing to suffer. That sounds sad, but they are, right? This is talking about people choosing to suffer. It wouldn't make sense for me to have it here and then talk about them choosing to avoid it because they're not. They're choosing to suffer, not avoid it. Okay, let's try after sentence 15. These people may do everything they can to avoid riding in elevators or being around cats, for example. Other people simply choose to suffer with their phobia because they do not know how to avoid their fears or how to treat their phobia.
Yes.
Clearly, having to avoid everyday objects and situations can cause big problems in a person's life.
I say
Yes, because I forgot what I said earlier.
Yes or no? What is sentence 15 talking about?
people may do everything.
Sentence 15 is talking about avoiding. What is sentence 16 talking about?
They
Avoiding. And what is this one talking about, though? How they're choosing to suffer with it.
Yeah.
So where would this go then? Would I choose this where they choose to suffer with it? Would I put it in between the two talking about avoiding?
Yes.
But there is no.
If I talked about some people avoid it, other people choose to suffer, some people avoid it.
Mhm.
Would that make sense if I go
Yeah.
back to avoiding?
I would.
Well, no.
I'd say that.
After.
Yes,
I'm
but
sorry.
no. After sentence 16.
After sentence 16?
Easy dubs, yeah.
What do you think?
I'm gonna say.
Both of these are talking about avoiding. If I'm talking about choosing to suffer here, I can't stick it in between these two if I'm talking about the same thing.
Oh, it'd be after sentence.
It'd be after sentence 16. Okay, number 3. Number 3. The meaning of sentence 14 can be improved by changing stuff to What is this sentence what is this question asking me to do?
To change a word to make the word better.
Change it, make it better. When I say stuff, who knows what I'm talking about? I could be talking about anything, right? This is saying, shh. A lot of times, listen, because this is a very common question. You will see at least one like this, if not more. But a lot of times they might word it like this. Like something about in sentence 14, I'm going to put S. In S14, the word stuff
Can be changed to.
is too ambiguous. Or they might say vague. If they say this, this is what they're talking about. They're saying that it's not specific enough. Stuff, not specific. This is what they want you to do. This is what they mean. When they say stuff, it's not specific. A lot of times they might do this with it also. They'll pick somewhere in there where it says it, and they're saying when it says it, what are they talking about? Or them. They're saying it's not specific enough, so you need to pick a word that's more specific. This is a very, very common question that you will see on the test. Be careful on these, okay? So this is what it's asking. If it says the word stuff is too ambiguous or the word stuff is too vague, this is what they mean. It's not specific, be more specific. So let's look at sentence 14. Some people can avoid stuff. So what is it talking about? What stuff are they avoiding?
Their phobia.
Their phobia, right? So let's see which of these matches. Some people can avoid much of it.
No.
No.
Does that make it any more specific?
Because it still says
No.
about phobias.
The wording does not.
I'm going to write not specific. Some people can avoid a lot.
No.
No.
It still has nothing to do with the
It's still not specific, right?
It's not specific.
Some people can avoid things like that.
It's not saying what they're
It's
avoiding.
still not specific, right? Some people can avoid whatever causes their phobia.
Yes,
Yes,
because it's
sure.
specific and it talks about the phobia.
This is specific. I'm spelling it wrong. There we go. This is specific. That's what we want, right? Okay, hold on. Number 4. Let me read the question again. Muriel wants to add a topic sentence to the beginning of the 4th paragraph, sentences 17 through 23. What would be the best topic sentence for this paragraph? So which sentence best introduces this paragraph? Let's read this one. Medications and hypnosis have been used to treat phobias. However, most therapies involve at least some type of desensitization. Desensitization is exposing a phobic person to small amounts of a fear-causing object or situation. For example, a person with a fear of dogs might be shown a picture of a dog. With the help of a therapist, the person learns calming strategies so that he or she is not scared of the picture. Next, the person may be exposed to a live dog in a cage. When the person learns to be unafraid of the caged dog, he or she might be placed in a room with a friendly, uncaged dog. Gradually, the person learns to not fear dogs at all. So let's see which of these introduces us the best. F. Treating a phobia is a long, difficult process, but treatment is often successful.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, it would make
Yes.
Does it talk about it being a long, difficult process?
Yes.
It doesn't say it specifically, but can you assume it would take a long time to go through all those steps?
Because
Yeah.
it depends on-
Does it talk about it being often successful, though?
No.
No. I mean,
I mean, it doesn't necessarily say that.
So.
We don't know. So do we want to put a question mark, maybe?
it says
Yeah.
often.
So am I
G.
But
Phobias are considered by scientists to be a type of anxiety disorder.
No.
no.
Would this go good at the beginning of this?
No.
No,
we're
because
not
that
talking
would be
about that.
more.
The whole thing is it doesn't say one word about the scientists.
That would go more with
Or does
the second paragraph. I think. First or
Oh, I'm
second
so
half.
thankful.
Right, wrong paragraph. This would go better. This doesn't go with this paragraph. H. The word phobia comes from the Greek word phobos, which means fear. Does that have anything to do with this paragraph? No. I'm going to draw an arrow and have this be this one too. J. 17th century scientist Sir Isaac Newton is said to have suffered from agoraphobia, being unable to leave his home for years. Does this have anything to do with this paragraph? No. Says nothing about him. Says nothing about him. Good. So which is it? F. It might not say these things right out, but we can assume that it's a long, difficult process. But if they follow the steps, we can assume they would be successful, right?
Actually, how big the phobia would be.
Okay, so now numbers 5 and 6 you're going to try to do on your own. Number 5, what is the best way to combine sentences 25 and 26? So for this one, when you're combining sentences, you need to make sure that you have correct sentence structure. Which means if it's a compound sentence, I have everything that I need for a compound sentence. If it's a complex sentence, I have everything that I need for a complex sentence. A lot of times on this one, they will get you on this because they'll put a run on here and you will pick it. Do not pick a run on. Check it. You can do this with your partner, but you're doing this on your own. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, then number 6. Let me go ahead and read number 6 real quick. Muriel wants to look up some information to add to this paper. She wants to include more information about ways phobias can be treated. What would be the best source for her to look in to find this information? So if she wants to find more information about ways phobias can be treated, where can she find this?